Good evening, folks. It's good to see you all here in person at 1871, and for those of you who are online, welcome also. My name is Jay Walsh. I'm the Vice President for Economic Development and Innovation for the University of Illinois, and I'm also the Board Chair for the Chicago Council on Science and Technology, otherwise known as C2ST. For those of you who are new to C2ST, we're a 16-year-old not-for-profit organization that seeks to inspire and engage all segments of society about science and technology and the contributions of science and technology to society. C2ST hosts free programs for current STEM topics throughout the year. They're in person, they're virtual, and in this case, they're both of those. You can sign up to receive updates on upcoming programs at c2st.org, or for those of you in person, at the table in the back of the room. Also, please consider donating to C2ST so we can continue offering free programming and resources to those folks here in Chicago. And there's a QR code on your seat. We'll help you with that. I also want to thank 1871 for this iconic venue, and to Forbidden Fruit and Mars Brewing for the donation of beverages, and to the individual donations from a number of you that made this program possible. And a bit of housekeeping. We will be using Menti, MENTI.com for polls and Q&A. So if you queue that up in your browser or on your phone, then I'm told there's also a QR code for that on a slide. Maybe? Is that there? Good luck for those of you in the back of the room pulling up that QR code. Maybe you can pull it off the screens in the back of the room. So you can do that there too. This program has been in the works at C2ST for months. And I want to personally thank the C2ST Policy Committee for all their hard work on this very important topic. And to the guest who is here in Chicago today, the President of the United States, for his executive order on the safe, secure, and trustworthy development and use of intellectual property, which came out recently and is a great pre-read for everything we're going to hear tonight. And if you haven't read it yet, just go to the White House website, and you can do it as a post-read after today's event. As everyone here knows, whether you're in the room or online, the topic of AI is ubiquitous nowadays. C2ST wants to make sure, as with all topics that we cover, that Chicago and the public at large have access to reliable information from trusted experts in the field, hence our esteemed moderator and panelists tonight. Now I would like to introduce our moderator for the evening, whose voice is present and welcome in so many of our homes and cars and earbuds every day, Sasha Ann Simons. Sasha is an award-winning journalist and the host of WBEZ's Reset, a daily midday talk show from Chicago's NPR station. She came to the Windy City from Washington, D.C.'s NPR WAMU, where she was a program host regularly behind the mic at newscasts and talk shows. Ms. Simons was also a national reporter focused on the issues of race, identity, and economic mobility. Her accolades include a regional Edward R. Murrow Award, a radio feature award from the National Association of Black Journalists, and multiple awards from the Society of Professional Journalists. She is a native of Kingston, Jamaica, grew up in Toronto, has a bachelor's degree in journalism from Ryerson University and a master's degree in producing for film and television from American University. Sasha is joined by our esteemed panelists, who can all walk up on the stage as I introduce them. So Ian Foster is the director of Argonne's Data Science and Learning Division. He's an Argonne Senior Scientist and Distinguished Fellow and the Arthur Hawley Compton Distinguished Service Professor of Computer Science at the University of Chicago. He was the director of Argonne's Computation Institute from 2006 to 16. Dr. Foster's research contributions span high-performance computing, distributed systems, and data-driven discovery. He has published hundreds of scientific papers and 8 books on these and other topics. Methods and software development under his leadership underpin many large national and international cyber infrastructures. Next, Elena Maris. Elena is an assistant professor in the Department of Communication at the University of Illinois at Chicago. Her research is concerned with media, technology, and society. She has expertise in user-industry relations, privacy, and the politics of platforms and AI, audience measurement, as well as social media metrics. Her work also includes digital fandom and online communities, as well as marginalized users, all areas in which she has published widely in the scientific and has been featured in the lay press. She is an affiliate at the Data and Society Research Institute, which studies the social implications of data-centric technologies, automation, and AI. And previously, Dr. Maris was a postdoctoral researcher with the Social Media Collective at Microsoft Research, following her PhD work at the University of Pennsylvania. Next, Nick Lucius. Nick serves as the City of Chicago's Chief Technology Officer in the Office of Mayor Brandon Johnson. Previously, he worked in the Office of Mayor Lori Lightfoot as the Chief Data Officer. His specialty is determining how technology, data, and design can help and serve he has served under 4 Chicago mayors, 2 governors, and a state legislator. And finally, Christine Young. Ms. Young is a partner in the intellectual property, brand management, and technology and AI transactions practice of Mayor Brown's Chicago office. With a deep understanding of the legal complexities surrounding AI technologies, Ms. Young provides guidance to companies seeking to protect and leverage their intellectual property assets. Her expertise extends to drafting comprehensive corporate policies that address the unique challenges posed by AI, and ensuring that clients are equipped with the necessary legal framework to navigate the intricate landscape of AI-related intellectual property and issues. I'm now going to turn the stage over to our moderator, Sasha.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? Thank you all so much for being here. We are excited to have this conversation with you today. So just a reminder to scan your QR codes and join in on our polls. I think we have a couple questions there for you, and we want to see how you stack up there. And also, if you scan ahead or if you skip through, you can get to entering questions as well, especially for the virtual folks who are watching us right now. Listen to our conversation, and we want you to engage by adding your question so that I can get to it and get it to our panelists as well. So we'll just dive right in since we've been introduced and we've got lots to talk about. And I want to start by saying that as a journalist, I feel like AI kind of popped up out of nowhere, but I know it hasn't. I know that's kind of silly, but it was barely on radars, I feel like, in the last 3 to 5 years. And then all of a sudden in the past year, that's all we've been talking about and all we've been writing about. So I want to start with you, Ian, and I wonder if you have thoughts on the shift that happened. Like, what's the difference between last year and this year when it comes to the world of artificial intelligence?
Right. Nowadays, I think, well, today you can't help but read about AI and wherever you are or hear about it. And actually it's a very old, I mean, the term was coined in 1960. Someone, MIT professor, organized a workshop. He said, if a couple of weeks, we could probably solve this AI problem. Didn't quite manage to do it, but the work has continued and produced a series of really remarkable advances in technologies which we say technologies that solve problems that we would imagine would require human intelligence. But why have things changed in the last decade and then increasingly just in the last couple of years? So it's first of all thanks to really amazing technical advances, advances in the methods of AI and in the computers that we use to solve AI problems and in the data that we have available to train models. But I think another reason why it's in the news right now is that AI has been used for all sorts of things over the years as we've learned how to solve different problems. But recent developments really seem to speak to something that is a very human thing, which is AI systems can suddenly talk to us as if we were talking to them. So they can write poems and sonnets and do people's homeworks. Things that we really strike at the very heart of what I think we think as making ourselves human. And that's, I think, has really generated a great deal of both excitement and anxiety.
Yeah. Well, before I move on to you, Christine, I wanted to take a look at some responses that we've already got coming in on our main question. How do you use AI in your everyday life? And people have already started weighing in. They're saying things like research. I think a lot of people are saying that. Coming with new ideas, proofreading, creative work, curiosity, travel planning. That's a new one. Coding assistance, virtual assistants, finding books. So lots of thoughts there. But Christine, so that we're all on the same page in this room, we've heard a lot of terms: OpenAI, ChatGPT. That's another buzz term, right? Generative AI. What does that all mean? What's the difference?
That's a really good question. And there's a lot of different players in the space and a lot of different terms being thrown around. And some of the major ones are the ones that you just touched on. So let's say you can think about it as ChatGPT is the AI product. It's the system that folks are using. It's the generative AI tool. It is put out by a company called OpenAI, an organization. That's the organization that developed the tool. And in terms of generative AI, I think it's important to kind of take a step back, and there's sort of two general types of AI, one being generative AI and one being traditional AI. Your traditional AI is that's been around for a really long time. That's you have a system, it's trained on a set of standards or logarithms, a set of rules, and it spits out output based on the rules that it's been trained on. It's not really generating anything new. It's instead using what it's been trained on to say, a good example is like you're playing chess against a computer. That program is an AI, a traditional AI program. It's trained on the rules of chess, and based on those rules that it was trained on, it's able to respond to the opposite player and move pieces and complete a game.
So we've been using this for a long time, but a lot of us just didn't know that. We weren't coining it with that term.
Exactly. It's been around for a while, that traditional AI. And as lawyers, we've been advising on AI for like many, many years, pre-pandemic. And it's just really sort of hit the forefront and kind of got on everybody's radar, and it's spiked significantly in the recent years. Generative AI, though, is I guess what's causing all the recent hype. It was I believe sparked by the release of ChatGPT, which is just publicly available. Everybody can use it, and it's really, really a powerful tool. But generative AI, meaning an AI system that's trained on a set of training data and is able, based on that training data, like millions and millions of, say, images, in the case of, say, like a stability AI, just trained on a bunch of data or information, and is able to, based on prompts, spit out or generate new information or new work product. So that's really like your ChatGPTs of the world versus your playing a computer game against the system.
Yeah, and we've got another slide up, also asking the same question: how do you use AI in your everyday life? But we've provided some very specific ways in which you could do so. And so far, our respondents are all sort of piling in on the same response. Oh, we've got other. I don't know what that means. I'll have to check with them later. But a lot of folks saying chatbots that immediately answer your questions. You know, when you go onto certain websites and that agent that wants to help you, yeah, that's AI. So let's talk more with you, Christine, before we turn to others. As an attorney, you mentioned that. I'm curious how AI did change the dynamics of your business. You talk about the fact we've been doing this well before the pandemic. So, but there was some sort of shift, right? So talk about that and how your industry overall and your clients, how they were all affected.
Yeah, so really within the last year, I mean, we've been advising clients on AI-related issues for a while, but now it's so front and center. There's more of a push to put robust policies in place to govern the use of AI to make sure that you're not running afoul of laws, you're not subjecting the company to various risks, given the powerful tools that are now just readily available by like any employee sitting at their desk. They're given an assignment, they could log on to ChatGPT and generate something and put it out as if it's the work product of the company. That's just one example, but it's just so readily available, and you don't necessarily know who's using what and when to generate what. And so there's been a big push to put policies in place to make sure that companies are giving a framework and guidance to employees and directives to employees about how AI should be used and how AI shouldn't be used. I'll give one more example. Companies that are subject to just a number of different agreements governing, say maybe it's use of data or information, or like even, you have a contract with like a Getty Images and you're allowed to use that on websites. And some of these AI tools allow you to upload data, upload contracts, documents, information about people, and then query the system and it'll spit out information. But in doing that, you're making a copy of that work, and you're also generating content based on that work. And there's also a concern about how that organization behind the AI tool is using what's uploaded to it. Because in many cases, it's that, say OpenAI is using the information that's uploaded to it to further advance the training of its systems. And all of those could be breaches of agreements that the company is subject to, whether it's breach of customer agreements to not use their data, breaches of agreements not to use copyrighted works in certain ways. Those are just some examples, but really this has come to the forefront, and there could be a big liability issue here for a lot of companies, and they're very concerned about making sure that AI is used properly and within the bounds of contracts and law and all of those other things.
I want to bring you into the conversation, Nick, because I remember when we talked a couple weeks ago, and I was like, well, how do you use AI? You're like, well, I program every day in the mayor's office. I use it all the time. So do you think that the discussion has it been driven by the possibility that this just helps us do things easier and better? Or is it more of the sense of, hey, we can save a lot of money by going this route?
Well, I find that, first, it's a really interesting question, and I'll say that there's the conversations that usually start are really around both. People have ideas. There's a lot more ideas of what to do with AI than there are actual implementations of things. And so, ideas are on both sides of the spectrum. We could save a lot of money. We could do this faster. We could do this better and easier. But what I have noticed, and first I'm talking about traditional AI. We've been, 8 years ago, we were doing traditional AI to do some government functions. And always it was the same. It was, there's something that our current capacity can't do. We can't reach enough people. There's only so many city inspectors. There's only so many people to do their tasks that we just can't reach all the things that we're trying to reach. So the AI models that we put into place allowed for greater capacity, greater reach, doing more of the same. I'll give you an example. The beaches that we have here in Chicago. Every once in a while, it's not often, but every once in a while, they have bacteria that grow and make it unsafe to swim. The Chicago Park District goes and puts flags up and say, no swimming here. In order to do that, somebody's got to go and drive up and down the entire lake shore, and they have to go out in the water and take test tubes of water. All the beaches, 15, 20 beaches or so, it takes hours. It actually takes the entire morning to do one swath. And they have to drive those things to the only lab in the area that processes DNA for these types of tests, and then they take up those machines for the whole part of the state. No one else can use them while they're running those tests every single day. And we created a model to say, if you just test a couple of beaches, you can use the AI model to forecast what the rest of them would be with decent accuracy. So like there's an example where you can do more, and actually that's like it's money saving, but also the park district can use that money to invest in other programs, so you're not actually just saving money. Today, with this advance of generative AI, I really liked the comment that everyone has it, right? People, it's no longer something that the engineers only have access to. It's now consumer based. It's as easy as signing up for an email address to get your hands on ChatGPT. So it's already out there. It reminds me a lot of when organizations started. The internet came about, and they were like, no using the internet. Google search came about. Google search is AI. And so as an organization, we've got to wrap our arms around and really understand what this is so that we can, just like we were talking about a minute ago, devise those policies and guidelines to help everybody understand what to be careful of, what they can do, what they shouldn't do, and things like that. So that's where the conversation's going now.
Yeah, wow. Elena, let's bring you in here. Another thing at play, I got to address the elephant in the room, right? There's, at least in the news, fear-mongering when it comes to AI. It doesn't mean that everything that we just heard isn't true, but there are, potential cost savings to be factored in, as Nick just talked about, and there's real promise in AI, which we will continue to discuss. But talk of AI, it's often followed by, all right, well, is it going to replace us? Where are the jobs going, right? Is that a valid concern?
Yeah, actually, speaking of replacing us, right, I think it's two questions often. There's the fear-mongering around, will it replace us, all of us? Like, is AI going to become sentient and take over the world, right? That is dominating a lot of news headlines. And it's also dominating a lot of conversations coming out of large technology companies, and for particular reasons. And then there's will it replace me, a journalist, me, a professor, because journalists, professors, lawyers, artists are probably four of the most commonly discussed in the media examples of roles that may be easily replaced with AI, right? And are these concerns valid to me? Not particularly, but especially the existential threat, not at all. What I'm interested when I do my research about the ways that technology industries communicate about their products, I see this recurrent discourse, right? This way of framing the issue as how powerful, and we use the word a lot, right? When we talk about ChatGPT and these really large language models, how powerful it is. Well, that's business speak. It's really a business-to-business way of talking about a product to try to sell a technology. And it also does another thing of kind of moving the conversation away from regulation, policy, oversight, towards something big and scary and in the future. So I think when we talk about AI taking over, I try to look past that, and I hope that we as the public do too, and kind of look into what is the danger of AI right now versus some hypothetical future when technology has some capability that absolutely doesn't exist currently. And then the other, will it replace us? I think there's a lot to be said, and some people here have more probably to say on the legal aspects of copyright. There are a lot of real issues facing particular workers right now when it comes to AI. There are companies happy to lay off workers in the hopes that they don't need people to write up stories online. They can generate them. And then they might wonder why they're not getting many clicks because everything that's being generated may be misinformation or something like that. But even this, I think, is to some extent, it's a way to sell an AI technology to particular fields in the hopes that they can have cost-saving measures. And on the other side, it obscures a little bit one of the dirty secrets of AI, which is that often there are humans behind the scenes doing the work alongside the technology. So, for example, cruise vehicles recently were found to be having 1.5 to 2 workers monitoring the self-driving vehicle at any time. So if you get rid of that person, there's still 2 people in the background. you know, Alexas, when you talk to them, a lot of times someone maybe in India is listening because AIs can't often understand the social context of what you're asking, but the company wants it to appear to. So if you eliminate some roles, what you might be doing is creating 2 or 3 more very low-paid jobs to replace a white-collar job here, but these workers might be, like, for example, in another continent. So I think that those are the kinds of questions we should be asking when we talk about replacing us.
Yeah. Ian, I wonder if you have thoughts on the fear-mongering of it all.
So, you know, I'm fascinated by.
Turn your mic on.
I'm fascinated by the history of technology, you know, and you know, when the first person wasn't a human, I guess, but a pre-human picked up a stone tool and used it to do something, they were allowing themselves to do something more easily, and probably put someone out of work. You know, the other hunter wasn't needed. So, well, of course, the other hunter could do something else, and so that was a good thing. In general, you know, technology allows us to do more with less, and that's what it allows us to do. So is that a good thing or a bad thing? Well, it's a good thing if you're then able to go on and do something else. It's a bad thing if there's nothing else for you to do. So I think it's as much a political question. It's more a political question than a technological or ethical question. People will lose their jobs. A few years ago, this is 30 years ago, I suppose, in India, and someone said, well, I'm worried about technology because we have people who make a living copying documents out by hand. I don't think they probably do anymore. If we bring in photocopiers, they won't have a job anymore. Well, that's true, but in such situations, presumably government or other mechanisms are required to ensure that there are new jobs for people. And over historical time, there always have been, but often with significant disruptions along the way. And we need to think how we can avoid those disruptions as we empower people to do more with less.
I want to talk to you more about how you're using this at work, right? So you're having discussions at Argonne about how AI methods can be applied to accelerate scientific discovery. Now, in one example of this, your lab has deployed this new supercomputer called Aurora.
Yes.
I want to hear more about that because it's being hailed as a unique milestone for Argonne. It seems pretty cool. What impact is it going to have on everyday life?
So Aurora is a very exciting development. We're in the midst of deploying it. It's currently running at a speed that would make it the second fastest computer in the world. In a couple of months, we expect it to be running, you know, far faster than any other computer. So how does that affect everyday life? Well, you know, Argonne is a place that does basic research on energy-related technologies. So we're trying to come up with new ways of storing and transmitting energy, of generating energy, new materials that will allow us to manufacture things faster and more efficiently and in a more environmentally friendly manner than today. And these problems that we're trying to tackle, very smart people trying to tackle them, they're becoming increasingly complex. So we've come up with the easy battery technologies. Now we're trying to come up with the next generation of battery technologies that won't depend on, you know, rare minerals coming from China or other places. And so we need to apply AI technologies to help us with those discoveries. And so we're going to be using Aurora to train models like ChatGPT, large language models, but focused on scientific problem solving, not on, you know, talking about whatever ChatGPT talks about. So we hope that it will allow us to accelerate these discovery processes. So we're very excited about it. Of course, research is always, scientists are skeptical optimists, so we're going to be trying to see what we can do with these things. I'm sure everything that we think will work, much of it will not work. Some things that we haven't thought of will work, and we are.
What are some challenges that you can share with us?
Sorry?
What are some challenges that you can share that you've come across?
So in a sense, one thing that we can do with these models, we believe, is basically to create the capability that. So how do scientists work? Well, they do lots of things. One thing they do is read the literature, hundreds of papers and see what other people have done on a problem, and then think of connections between the things that they read. So imagine a system that has read all of the literature, roughly 100 million papers that have been written over the last 100 years, and can then suggest connections between those papers that perhaps no human would have been able to make. And then propose experiments that we can then go ahead and undertake to determine whether the proposed, a new hypothesis about a new battery material is actually going to hold. So that's the sort of thing we look forward to trying. So it's not certainly going to disempower individual scientists. It's going to allow them to focus their attention more usefully, we believe.
Elena, your work, it's hyper-focused on not just tech, but the relationships between tech and people. And that includes how AI, I think you mentioned this earlier, just a little bit of how it tries to understand humans and social context. And when we were talking a couple of weeks ago, you said, and it does a really bad job of it sometimes. Tell us more about how you've been thinking about this and some of the potential pitfalls as well as the opportunities that you've seen for how to effectively implement AI tools.
Yeah, so I look at, as you mentioned, even though maybe AI is really of the moment, we all have been impacted in our everyday lives by algorithms and AI for many years now, right? And in a lot of times, I think my work is concerned with the social aspects, like what happens when AI comes into contact with us just going about our daily lives, right? Because a lot of times we don't stop to think about it because we're busy, and we hope that AI will fix that, right? It'll give us a little bit of extra time for our regular real life, but I'm interested in it trying to figure out how to deal with us, right? And actually AI can't think, so it's not really concerned with that. It's concerned with doing a particular operation. And so one example is dating, like when you swipe right on a dating app. I look at the research findings that show us that algorithms tend to prioritize profiles of people who are considered more attractive. And that the mathematics behind that, from the data that was fed those kinds of algorithms, tells us that that's a white Eurocentric looking person. So if you're like a dark-skinned black woman with an afro, you're less likely to come up on other people's profiles. That is a misunderstanding of social context, and that AI doesn't understand that the data fed into it is based on racist and colonial histories that would center Eurocentric features. And that's a concern to me, right, in my research. And so, that's kind of like an everyday example. There's a ton of them. Your Spotify playlist, Spotify and other streaming services are more and more, the algorithms prefer 3-minute or less songs. So artists are starting to create 3-minute or less songs. It starts to impact and have this secular sort of impact on culture. And we don't know yet what we're missing out on because our lives become so based on what we deal with every day as we interact with algorithms, sometimes unthinkingly. And then there's like really more obvious, probably you come across the news desk, issues like predictive policing. We use algorithms in the justice system to decide whether or not someone should be paroled. We've found that these algorithms tend to decide whether or not you might reoffend based on your zip code, based on whether you have family who's been in prison. And I think as citizens, a lot of us don't think that's the way the decisions should be made in the public sphere. So from sort of things that feel very everyday and social to very life and death circumstances, we're all already being impacted by AI. And that's, to me, that's the concern of the moment.
Yeah. In our previous conversation offline, Christine, you were talking about a big issue when it comes to AI tools like ChatGPT, which we've been talking about, and ownership. Can you explain that? Why is that a concern? Like legally, how are you working around that?
That's right. So with all the uses of AI to generate new content, the question has come up, and it's come up in the courts a number of times, especially over the past year, about who owns the output of that AI tool. Like there have been situations where AI tools were used to invent something and somebody filed a patent application. Well, the patent office turned around and said, there was no human intervention here. The inventor, according to the patent law, has to be a human. It has to be a person. So you don't get patent protection over that invention because an AI tool invented it. In the copyright sphere, the Copyright Office has come out the same way. There has to be some sort of human intervention, some sort of human work going on to create at least part of the work in order for it to be protectable. And then in the copyright sphere, it goes even farther to say that if an AI tool created something, there's no rights to that. That's public sphere. And if a human intervenes and creates something like, say, within a broader work, and there's a human component, that particular component can be copyrighted or owned by a person or a company, but the rest that's AI generated cannot be owned. So very interesting questions, like companies and people having to be careful if they're meaning to create something that they want to protect, meaning protect, have exclusive rights over, the ability to license, the ability to monetize, the ability to enforce. Because if they're using AI to create that work or that invention, that IP, chances are, according to the law as it currently stands, it's going to be considered unenforceable, non-exclusive, public sphere.
Are you coming across that more in your practice?
We are. I mean, lots of questions about, you know, this say software program was created by using GitHub Copilot, and also there was a programmer involved, and we want to protect this. What's protectable? What's not? Is there any part of the software program that's protectable, and for other works as well? And sometimes the answer is not what a company or a client wants it to be.
Oh my goodness. Nick, let's talk about City Hall a little bit. How are you all assessing what the needs are, whether in-house or when it comes to city residents, and pinpointing the potential solutions that AI tools can bring?
I think there's two parts to this. One part is on all the potential harms and red flags and bias exacerbation and the things that my co-panelists have mentioned. And so in here, there's I think a policy role to be served by our government. And I was really excited to see the president's executive order on AI. And I think at the municipal level, we have a role to, you know, a workforce role and a public-facing role to protect and provide guidelines and really understand, I think, like how our businesses in the city that we regulate are ensuring the safety and the protection of residents from harm. So I think there's another completely other sphere, which is as a service provider. There's no technology that you buy today that's not full of AI. All these devices that are sitting here, AI is running as we speak. So there's a lot of controversial uses we've talked about so far today. There are a lot of mundane uses of AI that just accomplish these tasks that make life easier. You know, the fact that you pull your phone, I can pull my phone out now and it unlocks because it looks at my face. I used to have to press a couple buttons. I used to have to press a couple buttons 100 times a day. I don't have to do that anymore. There's really mundane things that make things that a person does just a little bit easier. When you're like dragging something on a screen and then the computer just knows where you want to put it, or you're typing something, you're trying to get something done, and it just like nudges you to the next behavior. I mean, all the concerns aside, all the concerns are applicable to how these things can be used in different ways that can harm. But just think about, when you think about what that all is, it's just products. And I heard the other day, it really resonated with me. And bear with me this because it's soundbite-ish and it doesn't cover the whole sphere of everything going on, but it's that another word for AI is software. And it made me think about how all the AI is delivered through software. That's what you're seeing with ChatGPT and all these different things. It's a software company making software to provide a service. And I started thinking about how that's something we've been doing for decades. Take our 311 system, for instance. It's how residents get city services, a lot of city services through it. It used to not be delivered through the internet. Go back in the old days, and I don't even know how they did it before, but at a certain point, it was by phone. You call 311 and you get a service. One day, decades ago, these conversations we're having about AI, we were having about the advent of the internet and technologies. And we moved 311 so that you could get it on a computer, you could get it on the internet, and that was a big deal. And eventually through a mobile app. Now I think about how, okay, so AI is software and it's products and it's just little things that make little things easier. And I can see where that can go as far as service delivery. What's that thing that makes it a little bit easier to get a city service? And ultimately, ease and reducing the friction to getting help from your city becomes an equity function, because the harder it is to get a city service, the more difficulty that there is in getting anything, the more that those who have resources are going to be able to get it, and the more that those who are vulnerable are going to be left out, because time and money is what it takes to reduce friction. And so simple, more accessible city services, where I get really excited about this question of like, what are the needs? How do you prepare for this?
Yeah. Wow. Ian.
Well, I was actually just thinking, the following I think is sort of interesting. So we have a neighbor who's proposing to do some construction, and so I was thinking, well, what rights do we have to deal? So how would well, in the old days I would have gone to visit City Hall, I guess, and asked the question. What I found myself doing was Googling and finding some things. But imagine if you'd loaded all the regulations and so forth into something like ChatGPT, then I could have a conversation. And so in principle, assuming that it has a conversation that's based on real facts, not hallucinations, there's a great increase in equity and access to information about what's going on in the city. So it's a very positive development.
Yeah, and I'm curious at Argonne if this type of tech, is it a hard sell at your lab to folks because of all the unknowns when it comes to?
We're all, I think, sort of like Missourians. What is it? Show me if it works. So skeptical optimists, as I said before. So we're trying things. Especially the younger people, are so excited. They want it. They will work around the clock trying things. Perhaps some of the older people are more skeptical, and we're going to. We've got enough evidence gathered from our own work and that of others to think there's something real there.
Yeah. So we've made a couple references already to President Biden's executive order. So I, of course, gave Christine some homework as the legal expert on the panel. And so she took a fine-tooth comb and read every page and has come up with some wonderful slides for you all today to enjoy. Now, she's going to take sort of a 30,000-foot view and kind of make some more sense for us. So yeah, talk us through that. What should we know about Biden's executive order when it comes to AI?
Sure. And in a true lawyer fashion, there are a few slides.
Yes, I wasn't kidding about the slides.
Flashed up there. Feel free to take pictures of them. Really, I just kind of tried to put some detail to what is a very robust document. There are some key takeaways. There's 3 slides. A lot of folks have started calling this a good first step in many different directions, and I thought that after reading it, I was like, that is a good way to frame it.
That takes us nowhere.
That takes us nowhere.
Great.
It sort of goes beyond. So there was the initiative that all the tech companies signed on to this summer. There was the AI Bill of Rights that was issued about a year ago. And those were all sort of guidelines, folks signing on to guidelines and issuance of guidelines. This goes a little bit further, and there are some mandates involved. In terms of, one of the mandates is companies that are putting out these generative AI tools, depending on the amount of data and everything that they're dealing with and what they're doing with them, they're going to have to make certain disclosures to the federal government. But so those few, and I've listed a couple of them on the slide, mandates aside, the order is a lot of guidelines. There are a bunch of guidelines and directives basically telling certain government organizations that within a certain amount of time, you need to do X, Y, and Z. Whether it be issue more guidelines or whether it be put some policies in place, it's really focused on 8 realms. And I've summarized some of the 8 realms and some of the main directives that that the executive order is telling. It's directing certain, like Department of Labor to do certain things, the United States Patent and Trademark Office to do certain things, and that all has to happen within a certain amount of time. On data privacy, it's guidelines, and it's also, again, requesting that Congress help with the patchwork of data privacy laws that is U.S. data privacy law. It's all on a state-by-state basis. All the laws are different. Some laws are more robust than others, and nobody knows what to comply with. There's no really overarching federal law. Has asked Congress essentially, like, please revisit this again. We need some sort of federal data privacy law. As another example, it told the USPTO within a year, work with the Copyright Office and come up with something regarding the scope of AI rights and ownership to give us some more directive, because we have all these cases going through the courts right now, and some of these are going to take years to get decided. We want something from the USPTO, from the Copyright Office, giving more detail about what can and cannot be registered and protected. So a lot of different, I guess, guidelines with some directives, taking us one step forward to more definitive AI rules and regulations, and hopefully some action by Congress in certain areas like data privacy. But in no respect is this order anything all that definitive in many respects.
Yep. What she said. Nick and Elena, I mean, what else comes to mind? What else do you think is important to consider when it comes to AI research and policy?
I think I just want to kind of maybe make the point again and build on it a little bit, which is that it's been said today, there's so much sales going on from companies trying to make money. There's so much, there's everything, there's the fear-mongering happening, there's actual legitimate risks and harms that can happen, and things that are already happening that are known. There's, and then there's so many like smaller, more mundane, everyday uses. And I think that the one thing that I think that maybe I'll just add here is that the one thing that I feel like I can say for sure, at least that I believe, is that nobody really knows where this is all going. And that's why a lot of the like future thinking, okay, this is what could happen, this is the road that we may be going down. I think it's important to think about that, to talk about it, to debate it, to prepare for it, to ensure that the things we fear don't happen, the opportunities that we hope will happen will. But it was said earlier, I think, Elena, you said it, is that right now, today, there's stuff to do, and there's things to act on, to create policies for, to create guidelines for, to try to stop things from happening, to try to make sure other things do happen. And it's just really important to focus on what's happening now instead of what we hear about from companies trying to sell stuff to us may happen soon.
Yeah. Thoughts, Elena? I mean, if you could, and I'm going to pose this to everyone, if you could fast forward 5 years and you could come up with the best case scenario for how generative AI has been incorporated into modern society, what would that look like?
Yeah, mine's the least likely to happen, I think my answer will be, but mine would be that we'd slowed down, actually. And just,
but we're already full steam ahead.
Yeah, exactly.
My
that's why I don't. I'd like to say I think that's going to happen, but I totally agree. You know, back to what's happening right now, we know in a lot of ways what's happening right now, and I think sometimes the conversations around regulation and things like these are very important conversations, but sometimes they don't ask larger questions about whether certain technologies need to be applied in particular contexts at all. And this, like you might say, ChatGPT, let's make sure that the answers coming out are less biased. That's a good move. But What then might be missed by that conversation is the environmental impact of these large AI systems is unthinkable. Researchers estimate that every time you plug something into ChatGPT, a query, it's like pouring out 1 bottle of water. That's how much water these systems use. So as a society, maybe we should be asking, it's fun to enter, like, build me a picture with a dancing dog, eating a taco, but is it worth it to me to waste 1 bottle of water for that? And maybe some of those, should this exist in this context at all, conversations that honestly are a public conversation because it impacts all of us, that sometimes regulation just starts with with the assumption that it does exist and will. And I wish sometimes that we could slow down and ask those larger questions. But that's also why I wish I could be more optimistic about that, but I'm a little less optimistic about it.
Before I get responses from Ian and Christine, a reminder that I'll turn to you all next. And we've already got questions coming in from the folks who are watching us virtually. I'll try to get to as many as I can, but I wanted to remind the folks in the room that we'll come around to you as well. But Ian, what comes to mind for you when you fast forward 5 years?
Well, I thought the concerns that were just raised are really important to keep in mind. My concerns are perhaps sort of somewhat different. I'm very concerned about what the US has always been prosperous, and to the extent it is a force for good in the world, it's because of its ability to innovate and find solutions to problems that seem maybe insurmountable at the time they were posed. And so I think AI is going to be an important tool for allowing us to continue to innovate. And so I'm very concerned that the US maintain its leadership role in these areas, hopefully in a way that also addresses these other concerns like sustainability and resource consumption.
Christine, take us home. No, I'm kidding.
So I'm hoping that 5 years down the road, there's some sort of mechanism put in place to flag when something may or may not be accurate. So what we're seeing a lot in the law is you refer to an AI that spits out inaccurate information, like it hallucinates hallucinations by AI, and it's fairly common. There have been some tools that we've been using as lawyers, and it's a little bit scary, and like you can do this on ChatGPT, or there's other programs like Harvey or whatnot, and you can ask it questions, and you can say, is there any legal authority or any authority on this? And it will just spit out an answer it will give you an answer to any question. In some instances, it'll give you case citations. It'll give you citations to like statutes and law and all of these things. And oftentimes, I don't say oftentimes, but more times than I would like to see it happen, those sources are not they're not real sources. What the tool is telling you that the source says is not what it actually says. And I mean, there's instances where the cases don't exist at all. And all of that is very scary. So we've sort of, I guess, in the legal industry, taken a little bit of we're not jumping into like having it write briefs for us or anything like that. Everything needs to be checked by a human, and you shouldn't be using it in that way. But I think that applies to other applications as well. Like there's all this concerns about misinformation on social media, concerns about misinformation on the internet, and to the extent that AI tools are being used to generate content that's then being published, and it's referring to sources, and then it's putting out new work product and new publications and new information. I think there needs to be a better way to flag to people whether the information is accurate or not.
All right, I'm going to turn this over to the audience Q&A. So if you've got questions in the room, someone walking around with a microphone? Okay, we'll do that. Why don't I start with one of the ones that have already come in from the folks who are watching us virtually. Okay, if AI is I might turn to you, Christine, but if AI is already pervasive in many ways the public isn't aware of beyond ChatGPT, is it too late for any reasonable regulation to avoid its risks? That is, has the horse already left the barn?
That's a really good question. And I think in some respects it has, but in a lot of respects, regulation is going to be very helpful going forward, especially as we see advancements in AI technologies, new uses, increases in existing uses. I think regulation is really going to help to reel that in, because right now there's just a bunch of open questions, and there's a lot of uses of AI. There's a lot of open questions about the law, applying, operating within the law, who owns what, and more regulation, more guidance from a legal perspective, besides all these cases now pending before the court, and a bunch of directives, guidance and directives to Congress to issue various things. More certainty, I think, here is better than the situation that we're in now. And once you have that certainty, then everyone can operate within that framework.
Let's get a question from the room if we've got one ready. We got lots of hands up. All right, perfect. Miss with the scarf, the blue scarf, did you have your hand? Yes.
Yeah. Now I see why you kept going on. I sat through a presentation by Northwestern University recently on generative AI, and they gave an example of how it was being used in healthcare. And they were talking about now with patient notes, when you're sitting with patients, that you can put the actual kind of conversation you're having with a patient through generative AI, and they do the notes for you and give you some recommendations on, you know, what might be prescribed to that. And I was curious about your comments about legal protection, and it just seemed to me like if all of my information now goes into a piece of software and it becomes part of the general information that feeds the beast, is that violating HIPAA? I mean, what kind of protection do I have for that, on that not becoming part of public domain? Or if somebody then Googles me or puts me into ChatGPT, is my whole medical history going to come up and things that I don't really want revealed to people?
Oh, great questions.
That is a great question. And my initial thought when you said that is hopefully the doctor's office or whoever is contracting with the provider of that technology has an agreement in place that the information entered into the tool by the hospital is not going to be shared and is going to be HIPAA compliant, and all of those things. It's not going to be used for other purposes other than giving the recommendation back to the doctor or the patient, but not being used beyond that. And there's ways to contract for that, for sure. That's where a lot of this is going presently, without certainty about like what the law says and what you can and cannot do. Generally, in terms of AI, a lot of these protections are being done contractually between the software provider, the AI tool provider, and the company. And in some instances, the tool provider is saying, no, like we need to use this. We'll scrub it. We'll scrub it. It won't be personally identifiable, but we're still going to use it in some respect. I don't know what that agreement says between that particular provider and whatever program they're using, but I would hope that those protections would be in place because the provider is obligated to comply with HIPAA. So hopefully that's there.
Let's go to another
Good
virtual
concern.
question. Yeah, good concern. Well, here's another question. This one looks like it might be for you, Elena. What are institutions like UIC doing as far as AI competent workforce development, retraining of employees who might be displaced? I mean, is that happening?
I don't know if I can. I don't know if I know enough about that to speak to it. Actually, I can speak to the scholars at our institution who are extremely invested in both creating the AI of the future and deeply interrogating it. The rest, I don't think I am involved enough in this institution to really speak to that.
Ian, someone watching us at home wants to know, how long does it take Aurora to build an LLM of what size? And how is it different than using a smaller, help me out here, how is it different than using a smaller array of GPUs? What's that? GPUs?
A GPU is a
I just do the
particular
news, guys.
part of very a particular sort of very high-speed computer.
I talk about crime and
Yeah,
other
right,
boring
exactly.
stuff. That
So
is.
there probably is some crime of people stealing GPUs because they're very expensive at the moment.
Then it becomes my top story.
So, and Aurora will have 60,000 of these things, which makes it very powerful. And what that means is that you can train very large models that basically read huge amounts of text very quickly. So we expect it will take a month or two to train the sort of model we want to build once we have everything working. You know, and these are scales similar to those employed by the big companies, Facebook, Google, with their large language models. It will be somewhat faster, will be more specialized, but that's the sort of scale of resources that's needed to do these things. So it's really a sort of almost a nation-state scale of resource. Now we can scale very small models that are more specialized if you want to build something that just answers questions about, you know, the city of Chicago's regulations. That would be less expensive. So it doesn't mean that people can't use these models for other things, but to do the very biggest thing, you need the biggest computers.
And I learned something new today, GPUs. Hands up in the room. Did I see one over there? Yes. Gentleman by the window.
Hello, panel. I have two quick questions. I'll make it real brief. The first one was to address, I believe you saying that if somebody creates something and try to patent something with AI, the AI software, that basically that the patent agency would not recognize the AI software portion of the patent, but recognize the human. But I was wondering, what if the human actually created the AI? Would that fall under his software, something he created, and would that be recognized? And the second quick question would be, what would happen, I mean, I'm gonna ask the panel this, when will we get to the point where AI will probably be absolute, that, it, like you're saying, you worry about it giving false information and so forth, that it get to the point that it would not be questioned and it will be taken maybe as being absolute? Would that ever happen? And those are my two quick questions.
So the first question was that for you, Christine? Maybe tackle that one first.
Would you mind repeating the first question?
Oh, the first question was, what happens if you develop something, a patent using the AI? And I understand if you develop something using the AI, that basically that portion that was developed with the AI, part of your patent, will not fall under some type of protection. But what happens if you develop the AI software that helped develop, that created the patent that you're using? So you actually physically writing the code, but you also wrote the AI that you're utilizing too.
Okay, that's a good question. So you're talking about two different layers of invention here. So without knowing what the AI technology is and what the invention is, there is a possibility that the AI tool that you created, depending on how you created it, if you just did it yourself or with somebody else without using AI or something, could be protectable as software or a software invention. And I mean, and it might also be able to be copyrighted. And as far as I guess the second invention that would be generated by that AI tool, that's where you would, under the current standing of the law, run into an issue. So if it was only created by an AI tool, the Patent and Trademark Office has said, that's not protectable because the AI tool created it. It doesn't matter how you prompted the AI tool or if you created the creator of the AI tool is not the creator of the invention. That was the result of the prompts. The AI tool created that invention. But the AI tool standing separately could be protectable if it was created by a human.
And your second question was about when will we get to the point where we don't second guess it anymore? When we just trust it? Elena, why don't you take this one? I think the answer is going to be never. But we'll see what she has to say.
Well, yeah, I'm speaking on my own behalf. You know, there are questions that might, there are applications of AI where that might be the case eventually, and I can't predict. There are people here much more able to predict when that might be. And I think those applications are applications when there's a known thing to be found, a fact to be identified. The problem is that so many of our AI applications are, you know, AI has this sort of veneer of like objectivity, like it's science, right? Computer science. Unfortunately, it's actually not really objective when it's applied to social situations most of the time. And so a good example, and one of my pet peeves in AI, is something called emotion recognition. This is a quickly growing area in AI, and it's based on pseudoscience, the idea that someone can understand and identify and predict your emotion based on your face, the shape of it, perhaps. If we have any history buffs in the room, you might know where that came from. It has a very racist eugenic history. The way that you say things in a tweet, some police departments may try to use emotion recognition software to predict whether you're violent and things like this. So will that ever happen that I'll trust? Because not even any human can discern what your emotions are via your face or via how you say something, right? So in the particular, machine learning is very good at solving math problems and things that have, and playing games and doing things where there is some kind of reality to be found there. The problem comes when we ask it to do things that I don't think it will ever be able to do, and then we need to know now why we're letting it do that.
Government entities actually saying that the AI, whatever the output it give is absolute and we can't question it. 'Cause I think I was going there too, that we get to that, we might get to that point.
Yeah, we're there.
Nick, you want to weigh in?
The question is, will we get to the point where the government will say the AI is correct, and so you all, is that what the question is? If we are in a situation where that happens, then we have a lot of problems. I mean, that would be dystopian, like horror movie. And one thing is that government's role in the U.S. as far, it should never be about saying that this thing over here is correct and everybody shall listen to it and pay attention to it and it's what the truth is. But what I want to say is that I completely agree with this thread of conversation about treating it like the AI is some kind of objective answer or truth teller. The AI that I've seen, the ChatGPT that I've used, it is not for that. It is not. It's not good at it. It has so many problems and biases, and like we were saying, like racism built into it. And where I've seen those tools where they can be useful is when you're not treating it like it's going to give you an answer. It's when you're treating it like I've said, I'm going to plan an event, and what are some ways that I can plan an event? What are some methods for Q&A? And I found it to be like a friend to say oh, here's some ideas, here's some things you can do, and I can say, wow, I never would have thought of those. I'm in charge. You're not telling me the truth. It's opinion based. It's ideas, and then I can go just like I'm doing a search of the internet. I can read this and say, okay, now I can go do what I want to do, what I think. But long way of saying, if we're looking at it for truth and accuracy and objectivity, it's the wrong tool for that job, and absolutely, government should not be in the position of deciding that at all.
Can I just add to that? Sure. I would argue that that's already the case, and it's been for many years. So one sort of algorithmic prediction that we're all subject to is our credit score. And that's a very early example of taking a lot of data about someone and then making a prediction about how creditworthy they are, how much we can trust them, and whether or not they should get certain services. And the government says that businesses can deny us or not and change the way that we pay for things based on that. So that's been applied to us for many years, and now algorithms already decide things like who should get public benefits. Again, who should be given parole, and if there are more police cars in your neighborhood than mine, an algorithm probably decided that. And the government has told us that that is how it is, because that is how it is right now.
Got another virtual question here. Ian, what impact has the computing power needed to power large language models had on the environment? Do we have enough resources to support a nation asking ChatGPT 300 billion questions?
Right, so we can use these large language models for many things, and one of them, of course, I tend to like to ask it to write sonnets about things, just because I'm always amazed at how well it does it, but that's not actually a very laudable use of those resources. So the power consumed by computers it's not a dominant part of the power consumed by the US, but it is becoming a non-trivial amount, so that is something we should be concerned about. I mean, I myself like to believe that a computer like Aurora, the benefits we'll get from it will outweigh those environmental costs. But you know, will that always be true? I'm not sure.
Question in the room?
Hello.
Hi.
So I've heard a lot of talk about AI and policies being put into place by companies, and legal protections are coming. I'm wondering though, are there any protections for the human that are coming down the pipeline? Because I feel that, or I worry that AI is such a good money saver for companies that it's going to be entrenched in our processes and it will displace jobs, and there's no protection coming from the state or from anyone for the people whose jobs will just be completely gone and replaced by AI. So I'm wondering how we're thinking about humans in all of this, and if there's specific legislative protection for humans having ultimate value over AI, just overall.
And I want to note I got several questions worded differently, but same idea, same thought. It's on everyone's minds.
That's a really good question. And currently, I wish the answer was different, that like, yes, there are protections for humans, but the answer is, it just depends on the situation. Like, there's no, I guess, like federal law saying that AI is not going to replace humans in XYZ jobs. I mean, there's some examples, I think, that have come up recently where it's been because of actions of people that people get protections. Like, there's like the Writers Guild, the settlement, making sure that they're not forced to use AI, or that there has to be some sort of human intervention or human contribution with respect to certain works, that AI is not just taking everything over, that there has to be like a certain number of humans involved in each thing.
But for that, there had to be a months-long strike.
Yes. So yeah, exactly. But it's going to be, I think, a lot of people fighting for the rights to not to have their jobs taken over by AI. I actually read an interesting article recently about there's been all these lawsuits about these AI systems just going out and kind of just grabbing like images. Like, there's a Getty image lawsuit going on right now where Getty Images has said, Stability AI, you trained your system on like millions of these Getty images from that we own, that we should be able to license and monetize, and you just went out and trained your system, and now people can just prompt your system and spit out something that's kind of similar to these images that you trained your system on. So there's that lawsuit involved. And in response, the name of the company slips my mind, but there's a technology out there that's now, it's capable of basically corrupting the data set. So if you're an artist and you put out, say, a piece of artwork and you digitize it and you put it online, you can actually apply a program to basically confuse an AI system into thinking like, so this is an image of a dog, and the system will make it think like it's an image of a lamp. And so, because that's been applied to that image, when an AI system goes and scrapes the internet and uses that image, the AI system is going to see like, oh, this is a dog. It's going to see a dog, but get trained that it's a lamp. Unfortunately, so I think maybe like there's going to be more pervasive use of things like that to protect content creators. Unfortunately, right now, in order to actually confuse the AI system and like corrupt it, it takes millions and millions of images to actually have that technology applied to it. So like just one image corrupting, it's not going to do it. But I think you're going to see more advancements of technology like helping out human content creators. And then there's going to be probably some interesting legislation and lawsuits about like, it's essentially like you're releasing a virus into a program. So I could see some litigation over that. But really good question.
Yeah. We got just about 5 more minutes for questions. Lady in the back there.
Hi. I feel like we talk a lot about AI taking over jobs and industries, but I really see this as an opportunity for alternative jobs and industries. And I'd love to kind of get some more insight on what kind of economy we're looking at in the next 5 years surrounding AI. I work heavily in the API space, and I've already seen different API companies, like for example, Reddit has now monetized all of their public APIs because AI is using those as like LLM models. I'm seeing a lot of other companies kind of generate revenue from that as well. But you know, we talked about the sustainability side. Do you see there being industries around sustainability? We talked the fact that you mentioned that there's, you know, something like there's ways to mask images. Do you see an economy that's like solely around something like that? So I'd love to get a little bit of an insight on like just alternatively thinking about what the economy is going to look like, because I also see this as an opportunity of a lot more careers and industry that we haven't even scraped the surface of because of this technology per se.
And if more than one of you have thoughts, please chime in.
Just a quick thought. There's like one piece of your question because it's such a big question. I think that a lot of this is anecdotal, so I would love to see the development of data around this as we have experiences. But a lot of the forecasts around where there will be job development, I have noticed a trend that it ends up being people in the jobs they have today using AI in order to get to do what they're doing and expand the way that they're doing it and to create more value within the roles that they currently have. And so I share the fears of displacement and the need for protections and for ensuring that we mitigate against that. But to your question about opportunity, I wonder how much of it is ensuring that the risk is that if they don't develop the skills with this new technology, then their peers will in the roles that they have today, and then that there's a risk of losing out. So I just think it's a complicated. I think we need information and hard data to see how this ends up being developed. But I think that's just one piece of it.
What do you think, Ian?
So some pundit said about, well, I'll rephrase it about science. He was talking about something else. You know, AI won't replace scientists, but scientists who use AI will replace those who do not. Which that's sort of speaking to what was just said. Yeah. But I also think, anytime the price of doing something drops dramatically, then a whole new set of products, services, etc., emerge on top of whatever the technology is that has been sort of commoditized in that way. And there's a whole set of things that now used to be really hard and required a lot of education, now can be done fairly easily. And that's very bad for the people who make a living out of doing those things, and we need to find ways to re-educate them and reskill them. But it's going to also allow a whole range of new occupations and products.
We'll leave it there.
So that sounds like wishful thinking, but it's historically been true over hundreds of years and probably will continue to be true into the future.
I want to leave us on a positive note, so we'll end there. Thank you all so much for your attention and your time. You know, it's a Thursday night at 8, and you're here. Thank you. I think we're having a little bit of a party now. Is it party time? A little reception? Sorry, it was a little aggressive. I said party. Reception. It's a reception. Oh, and surveys. Yes. We're passing out surveys for you. Thank you. We want to hear your thoughts. Is this going to be virtual? Okay, so folks at home, you can participate too. Tell us how we did. Thanks again.